Shabbat Shalom, and this is 10 Minutes of Torah. Not the number 5,786. That's so last year. And not the number 5,787. That's so next year. But what we have right now is 10 minutes of Torah. Well, as I've been saying over the last few weeks, and it feels even all the more so for this Shabbat, we are winding down the Torah readings. We truly are. Only a few left in the Torah. And this week's Torah portion is called Nitzavim. Now, it's a whole nother topic to say, why isn't it, if it's the new year, that we don't really finish all of the Torah readings? You think a new year, new Torah readings. Well, that's an interesting question. I will speak to that in a minute. But Nitzavim always occurs on the Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah. Sometimes, matter of fact, quite often, it is a double parsha, Nitzavim, and the next parsha, Vayelach. And like this year, it is sometimes a single parasha, just Nitzavim, but always, 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 the Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah, Nitzavim will be either the only Torah portion we read or one of two. And this year, it is the only Torah portion we read. Well, Nitzavim begins and interestingly has allusions to, in a sense, what we're going to be doing on Rosh Hashanah and this time period. But let's begin at the beginning of Nitzavim, where it asks the people to embrace God's covenant. It's a reaffirmation, really, of the covenant. The covenant, of course, was made on Mount Sinai when we received the Torah, and it is, almost like a couple who've been married and decide to have a rededication of their vows or redo them again. I've done that, of course, many times in my career. 25th year, 50th year, they want to do it again. It's actually kind of very fun. Last time was about a year ago that I did something like that. And so the same is true of the Jewish people and God. The covenant is kind of like a marriage, and it's going to be reaffirmed in the Torah portion Nitzavim just before the people cross over into the land of Israel. So it begins by saying that who is included in this covenant? The answer, of course, is everyone. And here's a wonderful quote from chapter 29, verse 9. It says, you stand this day, all of you, before the Lord your God, your tribal heads, your elders, your officials, okay, the big people, in other words, all the men of Israel, okay, well, what about the children? Yes, the children. What about the women? The women, yes, the children. Women, even the stranger within your camp, from the wood chopper to the water drawer, meaning everybody, whatever you might be doing. You might be an important leader. You might just be someone who chops wood. Whatever it might be, you are all a part of this covenant. Moses then assures the people that the commandments are something that are within their reach. Also, a very beautiful verse that comes up this week. It is not in the heavens that you should say, who among us can go up to the heavens for us, that we may observe it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us, that we may observe it? No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart, to observe it. That's, I think, just a beautiful statement, and it shows you something about what I would call the democratization of Judaism. That is, Judaism is for everybody. It doesn't matter, not only is it inclusive in this covenant, but it is observed the same way, whether you are clergy, rabbis, cantors, sextons, whether you are clergy or a layperson. It is to say, while I may have spent more years studying and teaching and things like that, the obligations on me as a rabbi are no different than the obligations on anyone else. No more, no less. that is unusual. There are many religions where the clergy, think of Catholic clergy, for example, where the obligations are greater on the clergy than the people. There are other religions where only the clergy are privileged to the scripture. No, Judaism is a democratized religion. We all have the same obligations, and we all have the same access to our books. So that's one of the things that it says to us, is that anybody can observe Judaism, and I think that's very true. Now, I said there are hints to Rosh Hashanah, and I'm going to go back at the end and talk about why don't we finish this book of the Torah on Rosh Hashanah? If it's the beginning of the new year, it should be a new Torah. We're going to start it soon. But before we get to that, I want to go back to that phrase about who God has made this covenant with. So we're still in chapter 29 and chapter 30. So in chapter 29, it says to us in verse 19, it says to us that God has made this covenant with us and with those who are not here today. Now, isn't that interesting? Those with us and who are not here today. So who is not there when the covenant is made? Well, number one answer is us. But it's interesting because it kind of goes backward and forward. It has an idea that this covenant is something that is all-encompassing. Not only does it encompass all people, but all people, that is, all Jews, for all times. Those who are here today and those who are not here today. Those who came before us and those who come after us. So this idea of the covenant and all be included is very much tied into the concept, of course, of Rosh Hashanah, because it's a continuity that we have from our parents and our grandparents and so on down that we remember. And it's something we pass on down to our children and to our grandchildren. That's mentioned in the Torah portion. Now, in verse 28 of chapter 29, it has another allusion, if you will, to Rosh Hashanah. It says there, Hanistarot Adonai Eloheinu, that which is hidden, God knows about, right? Knows when you were sleeping? No, that's another religion. But God knows about the hidden things. But the niglaot, that which is revealed, is for lanu ulevanenu ad olam, for us and our children forever. It's interesting that those words, lanu ulevanenu, us and our children, if you look in the Torah itself, I will show you right here. You won't be able to see it so well, but they're in the Hebrew there, yes, you can see it. They're dots over lanu ulevanenu, us and our children. So what's the reason for those dots? Well, perhaps the message there is that what we do doesn't just affect us. By the way, those dots are in the Torah itself. Those are not something that they put in this copy of the book for some reason. We actually don't know why those dots are there. But it seems to me that the dots are there to tell us that when we do something, it affects us and our children, or vice versa. That we have a greater responsibility to the community. After all, that is what Rosh Hashanah is about, to remind us of the community. That's why it's very hard to observe Rosh Hashanah at home by yourself, but rather in the synagogue. So therefore, this verse, which says that things are revealed to us and our children, maybe that reminds us that our actions don't just affect us, but affect others, and that's what we're thinking about on Rosh Hashanah. Finally, last but not least, the final hint to Rosh Hashanah is in chapter 30, where the word for returning occurs 7 times, asking us to return to Judaism, to return to acts that we were not properly done during the year, to things that we have to apologize for, whatever it might be. But chapter 30, 7 times, the word for return is used, reminding us this coming Rosh Hashanah should be a complete turning. Finally, I'm going to end with why it is that we don't finish the Torah this week, why we wait a few more weeks. It's very simple. It's Jewish custom to say goodbye, but never leave. We take a long time to say goodbye. Well, that's exactly what's happening here. We say goodbye on Rosh Hashanah with this Torah portion, but we don't really leave the Torah until Simchat Torah, a little while in the future. That at least is my interpretation. Well, this has been 10 minutes of Torah, not 5,786 years last year, not 5,787 next year, but 10 minutes of Torah. Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova.